Hi, I'm Teresa Martin from Lower Cape TV and your host for our 10-week series, The Minds of Summer, produced in partnership with the Cape Cod Institute, which brings leading thinkers and doers from around the world to its well-known week-long workshops right here on the Outer Cape. Plop your head in the pillowcase, close your eyes, and drift into sleep. That's how it works, right? Well, it turns out sleep is a lot more complicated than a few Z's. Just ask anyone who has tossed and turned all night, woken bolt upright unable to sleep at 2 in the morning, or feels haunted by their dreams. With me today is clinical psychologist and world-renowned sleep and dream expert, Dr. Rubin Naiman. Dr. Naiman is an assistant professor of medicine and sleep and dream specialist at the University of Arizona's Center for Integrative Medicine. He has developed sleep centers, directed sleep programs, and written multiple books about sleep, including his most recent, Hush, a book of bedtime contemplations. He's worked with everyone from Fortune 500 CEOs to world-class athletes and entertainers to normal everyday people, but all people who share a wakeful awareness that sleep sometimes seems not so simple. Welcome, Dr. Naiman. So we think of sleep as something that happens naturally and easily, but maybe there's a lot more to it than that. Can we start out by, what is sleep?
Great question. Can we take about an hour to answer that?
Sure.
And we'll fall asleep in the process. It actually is, it's a very important question, and it's one that tends to go unanswered. If you ask both professionals and consumers what sleep is, you'll get very similar answers, and typically you'll get a negative definition of sleep. And by negative, I don't mean bad or dark, but people try to define sleep in terms of what it's not. So people will say, well, sleeping is, it's not waking, or sleeping is unconsciousness, it's not conscious. In sleep medicine, the technical term for deep sleep is non-REM or NREM. Basically, we're saying, what is sleep? It's not dreaming. And we do this also, we do this with health in our world. If we think about health, we define it as the absence of disease and not the presence of something. So this is one reflection of the problem we have, is we've not come to terms with what sleep is. And if we don't know what it is, how do we know to get it? I think the answer to the question of what sleep is comes from looking at what we've learned about science, but also bringing that together with what we've learned from more traditional, more cultural, more sacred, even more spiritual perspectives on sleep. And the bottom line, if you'd press me to define sleep, I would say sleep is a kind of inner peace. It's a kind of serenity. I think it's the place where long-term meditators go. It's a deep, beautiful sense of rest.
That sounds lovely. How could we not want to spend our time there? But, you know, sleep is often seen as a frightening thing, and it's something we've been thinking about for millennium. I mean, we have, you know, ancient civilizations with myths about sleep. We have Shakespeare. I mean, you can't say sleep and dream without thinking to sleep perchance to dream.
Right.
Aye, there's the rub, right? With Hamlet contemplating suicide, death, and all kinds of scary things, and sleep is part of that.
Yes.
You know, how have we come to think about where sleep is, and have we changed our understanding of it over history?
I think at some level what you're hinting at is there is some fear around sleep. As much as we need it, as much as we want it, gaining access to sleep, it becomes more and more challenging, because I think as a culture today, and it's probably true for the Western world, we're addicted to wakefulness. We're in kind of a pre-Copernican era with regard to waking. So
what do you mean by that?
Copernicus stood up one day and risked his life by asserting that maybe planet Earth was not the center of the universe. We live in a world where we assume that waking consciousness, what we're doing now, is the center of consciousness, and that sleeping and dreaming are secondary, even subservient states of consciousness that are there simply to support waking. And so I think we've damaged our relationship with sleep psychologically and spiritually. You know, to get to sleep from waking, even though we can see them as adjacent states, I often think of this as similar to, I live in southern Arizona, a few minutes from the Mexican border, and there's a semi-permeable boundary, a semi-permeable membrane, if you will. It's a lot easier to get into Mexico than it is to get out of Mexico. It's a lot easier to get into waking than it is to get out of waking. We overvalue waking, and we see sleep as being secondary. And if there's a secret to falling asleep, it's about learning to let go, to surrender waking. And I think that's easier said than done, because in fact, the Dalai Lama said that the psycho-spiritual process of falling asleep, this is the word he used, he said this is identical to the psycho-spiritual process of dying.
Okay, that's terrifying.
It
to
can
most
be
people.
terrifying,
Yeah.
right. There's that kind of profound letting go. Many people manage to get to sleep not by consciously or intentionally letting go, but by crashing. So a lot of us, I think, have consciously maintained what we call a sleep debt, a high sleep debt, so that we can crash into sleep. We keep going and going and going till we're ready to keel over.
Right.
We don't, essentially, metaphorically, we don't go into sleep with our eyes open. We crash into it. So we avoid needing to consciously deal with this issue of letting go. And then you're also suggesting, you're talking about Shakespeare and Hamlet. One of the, in fact, the most conscious element of sleep is not sleep itself, but it's dreaming.
Yes.
We spend most of the first part of the night in sleep and most of the latter part of the night in dreams. So the time we spend dreaming increases as we move through the night, and our propensity for waking up, not surprisingly, increases as we spend more time in dreaming. Most dreams are bad dreams. And so it's based on many meta-analytical studies. We know that about 2/3 of the emotional content in our dreams are negative. And that results in this Hamlet-phobic posture toward dreaming.
Well, do you think they really are mostly bad dreams, or we just somehow remember the bad dreams and the good ones we just have slept through and enjoyed?
Well, when I say bad, it's the emotional content, the challenging emotions, emotions of fear, anger, sadness. Now, you don't have to think very hard to realize there are a lot of those that happen to show up in waking life as well.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone's ever done a study of percentage, but we know there's a lot of suffering in waking life. It's not a surprise that there are negative emotions that arise in dreaming, because one of the things we know about REM sleep and dreaming is that it down-regulates negative emotion. So people who dream better, and we can talk about what this, people who dream well actually heal more quickly from emotional loss. And that's because a lot of that healing goes on in the dream. Today, one of the great tragedies of life today is that we have tens of thousands of wounded warriors coming back from the front.
Literally wounded warriors.
Literally wounded warriors, and many of them with post-traumatic stress disorder, which is typically associated with post-traumatic nightmares. These are horrific nightmares. And it's interesting, what military medicine routinely does is we dampen, in fact, we fully suppress those nightmares using medications. Prazosin is a particular drug that's used. So we push it away. We look at the nightmare, or the bad dream in most people, or the nightmare in post-traumatic situations. We look at it as a symptom of pathology. It's a sign of illness that we need to medicate. Everything we've learned about dreaming scientifically, everything that we know about dreaming historically and spiritually suggests the opposite, that in fact dreaming is an endogenous healing process. If we can support it and guide it, if we can provide support instead of judgment, pathological judgment, I think people would heal more quickly when they are open to their dreams.
Well, dreams have been part of us forever. You know, we have dream catchers, we have people who look for meaning in dreams. We have, I mean, so dreams are part of how we need to function?
I've come to believe that waking is actually one particular kind of dreaming. That dreaming is the larger expanse, the context of all of consciousness. And I think in many ways we've learned to block it out. For some people, it's just too large, too deep, too numinous a vision. It can be overwhelming. but some people refer to dreams as the language of God. There's a short poem by R.D. Laing, who's a consciousness researcher, that I think really speaks to this. He says, the range of what we think and do, he's talking about everything,
right,
the range of what we think and do is limited by what we fail to notice. And because we fail to notice that we fail to notice, there's little we can do to change until we notice how failing to notice shapes our thoughts and deeds. This is an invitation into the dream, and when we talk about dream work, we're not just talking about the dream at night and REM sleep. It turns out that we can learn to take what I call dream eyes, the same eyes that we see within the dream,
right,
and we can bring them into the waking world. And I think that is the single most powerful antidepressant we have. It re-enchants life when we look at it through dream eyes.
Can you give me a little example of that? Because that's intriguing, this notion of dream eyes.
Right. So in waking life, in contrast to dream eyes, waking life is driven by intention. We all have layers of intention at any given moment, you know, things we want to do or eat or rest or accomplish. And intention determines perception. What I want really determines, it sets a frame and it'll determine what I will see. It's like a camera, it hones in. And in the dream world, dreaming is informed much less by intention and more by reception. It's more open-ended. It is a wide-angle lens, if you will. And so we're capturing more context, and we're not honed in. It doesn't necessarily eliminate our problems, but it keeps us from focusing or taking them out of context.
Right.
And so we see the periphery, we get the context, and there's something healing about that. It gives us perspective.
Healing just made me think of, you talked about medicine and this sort of sleeping being something we have to heal, and that seems to tap into this bigger trend we have in our world where everything needs medicine, where we need everything somehow a sickness out of normal. We need to take a pill, or we need to get a $100,000 mattress, or we need to fill in the blank.
Right.
Is that really true of sleep, or what's happened?
I think it's a problem. It's something we refer to as medicalization. There's a general trend to medicalize lots of things. Historically, if you go back 100+ years, we began medicalizing pregnancy and childbirth. There was a time when pregnancy was this natural experience, and childbirth was something supported by the family, the community, and over time, it became a medical condition. And I'm not arguing against good medical care, but it almost got usurped.
Well, death is the same thing happened with death as well.
It's happened with death too. In the 1950s and 60s, we saw the start of the natural childbirth movement. So to kind of reinstate it in its right place. So this has happened with sleep. Sleep has become medicalized. When people think about sleep, they typically think of it in terms of what's going on in their biology, their neurology, what's going on in their brain, medications, neurotransmitters, and people come away with the sense that, oh my God, this is so complex. It's as if they have to read a medical textbook to get to sleep, which makes no sense, because for reasons we can't explain, children and dogs and cats and all kinds of beings who've never read somehow are able to sleep. So I talk and write a lot about bringing sleep back home, recognizing that it belongs to all of us. It's the default. In fact, it's a notion that's hard for people to get, but sleep is the default in consciousness, and what that translates into is that we are all always already asleep. Sleep resides.
Okay, well, wait a second. That's like a big, heady concept. I mean, so we're always asleep. That's
right.
Explain that, because that just made my head go around about 360.
So we have this notion that we have to go to sleep, right? And people say and think this all the time. I'm going to sleep, implying that sleep is someplace else. And the truth is, I can go to the bedroom, I can go to bed, I can go to the bathroom, whatever. But we never really have to go to sleep because it's already there. Sleep is revealed. It's present. It's revealed when we surrender waking consciousness. It's below, it persists below waking. So sleep is a state of peace, a state of serenity that we don't notice. It's as if it's under the water, but it's always present. We never have to go to sleep. We simply have to surrender waking.
Now, you have a book called Hush, Contemplations. I'm going to say the
A
title
book of
now.
bedtime
Book of Bedtime
contemplations.
Contemplations. And I know one of the little contemplations that I liked was about, and this is something, this state is a state of forgiveness.
Yes.
Could you read that little blurb?
Sure.
I just think it's beautiful, and it's very much what you were talking about.
Yeah. So sleeplessness is a lesson in forgiveness. At its root, the term to forgive means to let go or to give back. Our fundamental challenge in getting to sleep is to let go of waking. This is hard to do because, I think we're addicted to waking.
Yeah.
I'm in the process with some people of trying to start a new 12-step movement. It's called Insomnanon. It's Insomniacs Anonymous. I wrote a piece about this for Huffington Post, but I really do think that we need more social support. Again, this is not treating it like a medical issue, but it's recognizing the addiction to waking. So we need to let go of waking. Our willingness to forgive waking, to let go of waking, to forgive the whole waking world, and to forgive our waking sense of self is the key to healthy sleep. Good sleepers do this instinctively. Those of us who are challenged with sleep issues must learn to do this more mindfully.
I think that's just beautiful, that it is part of us, and we just let go of a part of us, and we enter another part that's always with us.
It's always there. You know, there's a beautiful depiction, a painting by Evelyn de Morgan done in 1878 called Night and Sleep, and it's a painting of Nyx, N-Y-X, the Greek goddess, the mighty Greek goddess of night, and her son Hypnos, the god of sleep. Now, we need to disassociate the word hypnos from hypnosis, because hypnos means sleep. And in this image, they're flying across a dusky sky, night is coming, and Hypnos has got a bundle of poppies in his arm, and he's drizzling them down below. It's reminiscent of the Sandman.
Yes.
And the notion is that sleep comes down upon us. The implication there is that sleep is grace.
It's a gift from the gods.
It's a gift from the gods. It's already given. We don't have to work that hard. The challenge in this respect is that we need to be willing to receive it, to receive that.
And we fight so hard against it.
Or we fight so hard to get to sleep, which implies that we really feel like we need to do something to construct or earn it or somehow bring it to us.
Right.
It's as if it's not been given.
Well, I was reading another place in your book where you're talking about the bedside table and all the kind of almost protectants against sleep, or the things that'll pull us back into the safe waking world. I mean, our nightstands really reflect our social perception of sleep.
Right. Very much so. So can I read this piece?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I became enamored with nightstands some years ago and began writing about this too. So our nightstands, our bedstand table, our nightstands are a clear reflection of our stance toward night. If you think about sleep as an overnight getaway, which I do, it's a great little vacation, then the nightstand is the bag that you're carrying with you, okay? And we learn a whole lot about how we think about our journeys by what we bring with us, you know, what it is we really believe we need at our side. So our nightstands are an expression of our prevailing operational beliefs about sleep, our personal sleep stories. If sleep is a nightly getaway, then the nightstand is the overnight bag we carry along with us. Are the items in and around our nightstands conducive to a surrender to sleep? Or do they tether us to the waking world with clocks, lamps, radios, computers, telephones, or energy-spiking foods and substances?
What do you have in your night bag?
On my nightstand?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. I'll tell you. So I do have a lamp on top, but I have a lamp with a low blue light. All the light in my bedroom, these are light bulbs that have very little blue wavelength. The blue wavelength of light is very prominent in daylight, artificial lights, computer lights, screens, and it sends a signal through the eye to the brain that it's daytime. So these lights don't suppress melatonin, basically. The other thing I have on my nightstand is, in fact, it's a book that inspired me to write Hush. It was written by my spiritual mentor, Hugh Prather, and the book is called Morning Notes. and it's a morning reader, which I read every morning. Little passages similar, but it's about how to rise up in the day.
So it's a gentle reentry.
It's a conscious, yes,
yes.
gentle reentry. Want me to go inside my nightstand?
Go inside your nightstand, yeah.
Okay, I have some melatonin,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a particular kind that I recommend and I use. I sleep well, which people don't like to hear because it makes me less empathic, but I do. But I take melatonin because I think, like everyone else, I'm overexposed to light at night, and I've written about melatonin replacement therapy, so I take a very small dose of that. I also have a small bottle of organic jasmine oil. I happen to love the smell of jasmine. It turns out that jasmine is a very powerful aromatherapeutic for sleep. And you know, even when we're asleep, all of our senses go out. We close our eyes, we stop listening, we can't really feel through touch. The one sense that remains active is the nose. And so I'm fortunate, which some men are, in having a mustache, and I put a little drop of
jasmine?
the jasmine oil there, and so it's present through the night. It just, again, I sleep well without it, but it enhances my sleep. I have an eye mask in my drawer, which I don't typically need because I have blackout shades. What else is in there? Some things I probably don't want to mention, but
we won't ask those.
yeah, you know, there's an association of sleep with sensuality as well.
Of course.
I'm blushing, huh?
That's so fun. You know, it's funny when you stop and think because as you were saying,
I have a dream journal in there.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Right.
Well, I sort of do that. I keep my iPhone next to me because I often will wake up in the middle of the night. I've dreamed something, or I've thought of something, or I've solved some problem magically in my sleep, but I don't want to forget it, so I'll kind of mumble, kind of put it in talk mode, mumble into it, and go back to sleep. Kind of the 21st century version of the dream journal.
I record my dreams now. I used to write them, but I often will actually dictate them into an email and send it to myself.
That's very 21st century of you. It's funny, the thing you said about scent is really interesting. When my daughter was in, she'll kill me for saying this, of course, but when she was in middle school, we had like about a 3-month thing where the kid couldn't get up in the morning. It was a nightmare. And I tried everything. You know what finally worked? Her favorite foods was bacon. So I'd press bacon up to her room and like wave it under her nose, and her little nose would twitch. She'd get very embarrassing to say that. And she would wake up. So it's interesting, that's the one sense that is still functioning as you sleep.
Yeah. You know, in Japan, they produce these alarm clocks that they don't necessarily make sound, but they can actually chemically produce various fragrances.
Really?
So yeah, you can have coffee. I don't know if bacon is an option, but there are a number of things, and some people wake up and smell these things.
Actually, in reverse, so it could put out jasmine or other relaxing scents. I'm thinking a market opportunity here. So, is sleep important to us? You know, we have this view of it that it's something we don't really need. It's sort of a necessary evil. You know, do we actually need sleep?
Well, there's no question that we need sleep. You know, in the past 20, 30 years, there's been an explosion of research in sleep. What's interesting is that most of the research questions, the sort of philosophical stance behind the questions are all the same. We turn to sleep and we say, hey, sleep, what can you do for us as waking people? Right?
There's that,
yeah. So we see sleep, and the same thing with dreams. We want to juice our dreams to make us better waking people. We see sleeping and dreaming as being there just to support us waking. But sleep answers in the affirmative. Sleep says, you know what? I will improve your energy. I'll improve your immunity. I'll improve your appearance. I will improve your performance. I'll improve all kinds of things. And it's true. It's true. So we certainly need sleep for that. Dreaming will improve memory as well, and dreaming will help us process, regulate negative emotion. But the one thing that's missing is recognizing what I think of as the joy of sleep. So when I do public presentations, almost invariably at the end, somebody will walk up to me and kind of look around, make sure nobody's there, and they will whisper, I love sleep. It's as if they don't want to offend all the insomniacs in the room. This has been going on for years. And I understand what they're saying. there really is a way. I think when people really get sleep, in addition to all the waking benefits, there's something so joyous about sleep itself. Truly, it's a hard to define kind of joy because it's not a sensual experience, although it's surrounded by that.
Right.
But it's an experience of such profound serenity. Now, most of us have been taught, and most sleep scientists will say, it's impossible to be asleep and aware at the same time. But you know, most of us have had the experience of being asleep, at least at times, and knowing we're asleep. If nothing else, there are those moments when you've had a long night, gone to bed late, and someone's
Right.
trying to wake you up in the morning, and you turn and you say, "Leave me alone, I'm sleeping."
Sleeping. Yes.
Well, you know what? You are. And in that moment, you're awake and asleep. And the notion that sleeping and waking are mutually exclusive is a mistaken notion. And we can learn to bring some mindfulness. We can, you know, most of us don't really have a frame of reference for the depth of peace and serenity that gracefully comes to us in sleep. So we think we can't experience it, but we can actually learn to, it's like letting your eyes adjust so that you can see in a darkened space. We can adjust our perceptual senses so we can feel sleep, and it is gorgeous. It's, I'm not saying it's better than waking, but when you get that, then there's no reluctance to go to sleep. You know, it's just a joyous part of life. That's the best reason to sleep, I think.
That is beautiful. And believe it or not, we've actually talked about sleep for almost our whole half hour.
Really?
An hour wouldn't even begin to give us time to get into this. So sleep, it's necessary, it's beautiful. Get rid of those blue lights, embrace a little jasmine, and don't be afraid to fall into the forgiveness of sleep.
Right. Learn to let go.
Learn to let go. Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed having you here.
Thank you.
And I look forward to having the conversation again sometime.
Great. My
Thanks.
pleasure.